Hey, Ellen Yin here. I'm so excited for you to hear my episode with Chase, where we talk all about how to sell without needing a large audience, posting every single day, or running expensive ads. We also discuss how podcasting has totally changed my business and how I'm able to leverage that as a media platform to connect with and build awesome relationships with other influential leaders. So make sure you tune into the episode and welcome to Ever Forward Radio.
3, 2, 1.
What's going on, Ellen? How you doing?
Hey Chase, I'm doing good. It's a great Tuesday so far, so can't complain.
What's life like for you right now in quarantine? We're still there. We're at the end of April as we're recording this. Is it any different for you? Life, business, really any different? What's the good and the bad here and the ugly?
I don't think business or my day-to-day schedule is that different, right? Because I'm accustomed to working from home and I've always done a lot of my communication via Zoom and other methods. But I think what I miss the most is just the choice to be able to, get out there, meet up with friends. I love going out to eat. Food is one of my love languages. And so I definitely miss that in the movies. And more than anything, I think I miss travel and getting to have that in-person community. That was a really big part of my life last year, was getting to travel all over the world. And this year it's been tough, I gotta say, just not leaving, my tiny apartment really.
And that's actually how we met about this time last year, literally this time last year at Paleo FX 2019. And that for me was, well, personally, I just love it because I get to meet people, but also professionally. And where we're going to kind of go with the conversation today is networking and really just getting to know these niche groups of products, of services, of people that you want to get to know, that you can find a unique way to support and just build relationships for future support on the back end. Why in person? What was it about the in-person experience for you that was so powerful for kind of getting your fingers really into business and momentum in a lot of areas for that?
Absolutely. I think the beauty of in person is that it's not scripted or planned, right? Oftentimes when you meet with someone over Zoom or a phone call, there's an intention and a purpose for the meeting or the call. So you tend to stay on topic and you have to be respectful of their time, obviously, because everyone's like today, for example, I have like back-to-back calls from like morning till evening. So there's not as much space for things to kind of just happen organically. Like, for example, when we met at Paleo, FX, I wasn't planning to meet you there. Like, I didn't even know you were going to be there, but I was there with a client. And you just happened to walk by the booth and then you came over and visited. And that was a chance meeting that turned into something awesome, a great friendship, and really ultimately started me on the path of podcasting, which has in turn impacted my business in dramatic ways. And so again, that's not something I could have planned for. And I think that's really the beauty of in-person, is that there's so many people I've encountered on my trips that I have developed great relationships with, and they've impacted my life and my business in deep ways that I just couldn't have ever manufactured over an online meeting.
For sure, but you're extremely personable, very,
Thank you.
very like easy to talk to. So I'm sure there had to have been some kind of ease and transition from in person to online for you. Can you maybe walk us through how you did that? Regardless of if we're in a global pandemic or not, sometimes just in person interactions are not possible. Maybe you can't travel to that conference, you can't afford the big seminar, whatever the reason. But if we want to, we can still find a way to make those connections. Would you agree? And if so, how have you been able to do that now?
Yeah. I mean, I think that networking is something that is absolutely imperative for the success of any business long term. And what's interesting about networking is a lot of people only turn to networking when they need something. So,
That's a big point. That's a really big point.
Yeah. So they wait and they're like, for example, like, let's just even look at this in a traditional setting, like the corporate world. Oftentimes people go to LinkedIn or they start showing up at networking events when they're looking for their next job. Maybe they just got laid off, which is obviously relevant to a lot of people right now with what's going on. And what people who are well versed in networking will always tell you is that if you're waiting until you need a connection to go look for a connection, it's too late. Like you're already months, potentially even years behind. So my belief is that networking and relationship building should be something you are constantly working on, constantly evolving. And I think that right now, with so many people at home and online, the opportunities to connect with people who normally have really crazy schedules that wouldn't allow them to have certain conversations or be able to, schedule you in, you're able to actually book a meeting with them, which is a great opportunity. And I always believe that in times of hardship, you can look for the lack or you can look for the opportunity. And I think this is really a time of opportunity for you to go out there and maybe reach out to someone who is, in your mind, out
Shoot
of
for the
reach.
moon. Yeah, shoot for the moon.
The worst they can say is no, or like literally not answer you. But if they do, it's no different of a result than if you hadn't reached out, right?
Exactly. Yeah. And honestly, in my years of doing this now, and you're almost year of doing this for the podcast, I know longer for your business. More often than not, I get a not right now than a no. There are definitely those, non-responders, and that just happens. I mean, life happens sometimes, but I can tell you, especially when it comes to like trying to really reach for the moon and get that guest that you really want on your show, or just that phone call or opportunity or whatever, that collab. More often than not, it's just a not right now. And that's a cue for you to just stay top of mind for that person and just keep building that relationship and then find the right time down the road. It reminds me of, I recently interviewed Jordan Harbinger, and he reminded me of this thing that I've heard him say for years now, and it's don't wait to dig the well until you're thirsty. Just keep nurturing those relationships now, and like just show up when you don't have an agenda, right?
Totally. And I think the other, to add on to that, what's interesting is, in addition to people saying not right now, sometimes it's not this project or not this opportunity, because I've totally, communicated with people before that, turned down being a guest on the podcast. And they're like, well, we're not taking podcast interviews right now, or, that's not of interest to us, but we find another way to collaborate or partner together. And so I think that sometimes people come into your life for a certain reason, but then what you actually end up, working with them on is totally different. So just being open-minded, I think, is also really important.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I'm sure these are kind of the conversations that you have with people in your community and in your audience and even in your business. So can you kind of walk us through the power of networking, the power of relationship building we've touched on briefly here, but let's get specific. How do you bring your unique strategy to people, regardless of like the size of their audience, or regardless of maybe what they think they have or don't have? And let's just kind of get out of our heads and talk real effective ways here.
Yeah. So I would say my big thing is, I kind of like to describe myself as an anti-guru or a marketing minimalist, because especially in the online world, I think there's so many things constantly being thrown at us that it's really easy to get lost in shiny object syndrome and chase your tail, just trying to do everything, because all of these, so to speak, gurus are saying, hey, this is the missing piece. This is the secret to 10xing your revenue or getting $1 million or whatever.
The three things you didn't know you needed to make 6 figures a month. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Click.
Exactly. It's very clickbait. And I'm not saying that doesn't work or that people haven't had success with that. Obviously they do. Otherwise people wouldn't do that. But, what I really found in speaking to my community, and this is now my 3rd year in business, and just a little backstory. The first 2 years of my business were really focused on done for you services. So working one-on-one with clients, primarily to help them with their Instagram marketing. I had a few influencer marketing clients and, a couple Facebook ads clients. So more just traditional like social media marketing services. But over time of working with those higher ticket like clients one-on-one, I kind of realized that there was a whole community of like budding entrepreneurs, other people like myself who, were starting out, and they were feeling overwhelmed because they were trying all of these strategies taught by, some of the big names in the industry that weren't working for them, because what these course providers sometimes don't share is, these strategies work well for them because they have really large audiences to leverage. So or maybe really large ad budgets.
The
So
odds are in their favor. Just statistically
Exactly.
speaking, the odds are in your favor of more conversions or just even reaching more people, right?
Totally. Like you're just starting on a different foundation. It's like they're starting on floor 100 and you're in the basement, right? So when you try to apply the same tactics and it doesn't work, you believe that you're the problem. But most of the time, you're not the problem. It's just that you are using a different strategy that's not meant to serve where you are currently in your business. So that's why I'm really passionate about helping people attract consistent clients with a tiny audience. And the way that I really walk people through that is, look, I like to say, this is not my quote. I don't know who originally said it, but it's something like, influence is easier to borrow than it is to create. And it's this idea that, you could spend months and years slowly building your own audience to sell to, or you can go out and find the people who already exist in communities and platforms that have been built for you. Your target market exists in communities already. How do you go find that traffic and just basically stand in front of that traffic, in front of problem aware people and say, you already have awareness of the problem that you need help with, and here's my solution. If you're able to do that, you can build a successful and profitable business without having to be, like Insta famous.
That's huge. I don't know why this analogy just popped in my head, but it did, so I'll run with it.
Yeah.
It's like, imagine going to the train station. And, I love travel, especially over in Europe and stuff. Train is a very effective way to get around.
So
also,
fun.
Yeah, it's the best. Also back east, DC, Baltimore, New York, I was always on the train. Imagine you're in a new country and you walk up to the train station because you're trying to get somewhere. And you're staring at this board of all the trains, of all the numbers, of all the lines, probably in a different language, and you're trying to just figure out, and there's a fair chance that you can figure it out. There's a fair chance you can try to, point to a sign or something and work, find your way to the right track. Or imagine if you had a local guide that said, hey, where do you want to go? I want to go to this place. Okay, cool. They walk you straight to that train on the right track at the right time, and boom, there you are.
That's actually a really good visual analogy. And it makes a lot of sense because it's efficiency, right?
Yeah. And I think it came top of mind because I'm supposed to be traveling a lot more right now. And so I think my brain is like, hey, Chase, we were supposed to be in a different country, different city. We're supposed to be traveling. Yeah. Damn you, quarantine.
I know. I'm so bummed. Actually, my birthday is next week and I'm turning 26. And
happy early.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah,
I
it's amazing.
appreciate that. Yeah. And I was really excited because my best friend has never been to Disneyland, and I've been trying to get her to go for years because it's like my favorite place ever. And then my boyfriend hasn't been since he was young. And so it's been a long time. And I usually go to Disneyland like once a year, which is kind of a lot for someone who doesn't actually live in California. Right. But I was so excited, and we had like all these plans for my birthday weekend in Disneyland. And now, of course, we're shut in. So it's going to be a little uneventful, but you just have to pivot. I think that's the biggest thing in life and in business. Like when things don't go right or a door shuts in your face, like you said, it doesn't always mean no or never. It just means not right now. And how do you pivot from that?
All right. So next week we'll have to have like a Disney Plus, birthday party Zoom meeting or something. We'll live vicariously through streaming services, I guess.
Okay. Have you actually seen, I have to say this there, my friend, she was so creative. She actually she posted this Facebook video where she took her kids to Disney, and she created the rides, like the teacups, and they were wearing Mickey ears, and she created the treats, like the churros. And yeah, it was so much fun. They literally went to Disneyland and they did that, where they put the roller coaster on the TV and they sit in the laundry basket, the kids. And then
I was going to say, I've seen this video. I saw something like it. Yeah. It's like a dad holding his kid in the laundry basket, and he's shaking it and splashing water on their face on a water ride. Yeah.
Totally. Yeah. It was so cute. I was like, dang, I'm too old for someone to pick me up in a laundry basket. But I would totally do something like that.
Never too old for that. That's why, definitely take advantage of having a boyfriend around and use that upper body strength and just, hey, take you down with the cars ride or, whatever it needs to be for sure.
This is why you work out. So you could do this for me.
I don't know. My workouts these days are just walks and push-ups. I'm probably embarrassed to try to pick up anything this day and age.
Back to the basics. The fundamentals cannot be overlooked. I think in exercise, also in business, people, people always want like the next fancy, shiny thing, but really it's the fundamentals, the repetition of those, I think that create success. So
what are the fundamentals that you help your people shine a light on? Again, regardless of the size here, we've kind of talked how some of those strategies for more successful people or just having the odds in your favor, a larger audience, that may not work for you. So how, let's say I've got a following of 500 people on Instagram, but I have a kick-ass product or service that I'm really ready to bring to market. I just want to share with people. How can I go about that and not feel like I'm just spinning my wheels?
Great question. So the biggest mistake I see, and this is going to really go against what probably a lot of people have been indoctrinated with. So bear with me if you're listening and you're like, no, Ellen, this is not true.
Wait, you think differently from other people and you don't just follow them blindly? That's weird. Yeah.
I know, so strange. But what a lot of people believe is that that it's consistent content that creates consistent clients, consistent customers. And so they get stuck on what I call the content hamster wheel, and they're just spitting out posts every single day. And they may even use time saving, hacks like, oh, I'm going to repurpose my content. And that's actually, that's a great strategy to do XYZ. But I think where people go wrong, it's not about, now, don't get me wrong, being consistent in anything obviously outweighs being inconsistent with anything. But it's not about the number of posts you put out, especially if you have a small audience, especially if those posts are, let's say, only reaching like 90 people and you're just pumping out posts every day to the same 90 people. It really is about shifting your attention to consistent connection. And the part that people overlook, even with their small audiences, is that they don't do enough social listening and actually really like this process that
Yeah, what do you mean by that? That's a great term, by the way.
Thank you. It's this idea that like we as entrepreneurs get in our own heads because we are experts in something, right? Whether you think you're an expert or not, everybody has a natural gift or a set of skills or knowledge about something that is just second nature to them, but is totally foreign to other people.
Yeah, something that comes more natural to you that you can teach and pass on to other people. Absolutely.
Exactly. Yeah. What I often ask people is like, what are you the go-to person for in your circle of friends? There's always something, right? So what happens is people are so close to what they know or what they teach that they believe they know what their audience needs. So they just write a bunch of content and a lot of how-to content. I see this a lot. People are like, oh, I'm going to give value. And they associate giving value with how-to content. But the thing they don't understand is that people don't necessarily buy information, like especially in the internet age. I mean, you can literally find anything anyone teaches for free somewhere out there, right? People aren't wanting information or features. They want a system and results, very different things. And so if you're constantly caught in the content hamster wheel of just writing what you think your audience needs, but you're not actually listening to what they want and how they describe what they're struggling with in their own words. I think that's a key piece, is that the language you use and the language they use may be completely opposite. And the way that people feel instantly attracted to what you're saying and what you have to sell is that they want to feel like you're in their head, where when they read something, they're like, oh my gosh, like how did she use the exact language that I use in my head all day, every day? Yep. And the only way you can do that is through social listening and actually having conversations, real conversations with your followers, with your audience, and asking them, what are you working on? What are you struggling with? What's keeping you stuck? And doing this message mining process repeatedly forever, essentially.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, these are tactics that regardless of where you are in the process of bringing something to market or polling your audience, or you've been doing it for a while and you just want to optimize things, this is kind of that mindset that you need to have, just this kind of constant social awareness, constant awareness, really. Would you kind of bring any kind of like a mindset approach to this? Is it just like, do we need to put ourselves, like the entrepreneur, the creator, do we need to kind of change or reevaluate how we think to better show up for our people? Or is it just a matter of looking at what our people are already saying and therefore we don't really need to change?
I think it's important to never assume what you think someone thinks because that is a huge roadblock, again, where you're like, oh, I know that they struggle with this, but it's like, how do you know? Did you have a conversation with them? Did you specifically ask them, this, and this is literally what they wrote to you in a DM or said to you on the phone or sent over a voice text? Do you have literal proof that this is what they think and how they said it? Again, how they said it is just as important as what they said. So I think that's something that people overlook, is they just assume, and they go in with it's like science, right? You go in with your like hypotheses, and you have bias. It's like confirmation bias. You're looking for people to agree with you on what you already believe, but that prevents you from actually ever getting to the root of the emotion behind why they feel a certain way about
Emotion.
something.
Absolutely. Yes. Yes. Pay attention to that.
Yes. So digging deeper is really, really important, because we all know that, we buy emotionally and then we justify logically.
Yeah. Yeah. Probably even more so now. Maybe we're even eating some more emotionally. A lot of different things. Emotions right now, I think, are driving a lot of behaviors, whether we realize it or not.
100%. Yeah.
When we can't do it, we want things more, right?
Yes, totally. And I think, really 99% of marketing and sales is just psychology. It's human psychology and understanding behaviors and why people think the way they do and what causes them to act a certain way. And so I think the more you can really get to know who you're actually talking to, just the more effective you can be with your marketing. And that's, especially beginners, that's something they often overlook, is when they get objections. Like, one of the biggest things people always come to me is like, I can't charge this because I'm receiving, like, you're too expensive, or you're too this or that. And I always say to them, oftentimes, not all the time, but oftentimes when people say something is too expensive, it's just like a surface level objection for something deeper, and you're not getting to the root of what that actual problem is. And it's 99% of the time a messaging problem. It's not like a service, or it's not something's wrong with your product or even your price. It's something is off about your messaging.
Yeah, I would even add on to that. It really comes down to, if that is the main reason or the only reason they're giving as to a hard no or ignoring you, then it's because their perceived value does not match the value that you think you are implying. And again, not to take anything away from what your product or service is, whether it's, a 30-day workout program or, a business course, it's how you translate it. And if you want to get better to translate it so that you do get less, if not even no no's, so that perceived and implied value is the same, go back to what Ellen was saying here, put yourself in the mind, in the body of the person, of that emotion, of that feeling, of that memory, and lead with that. And I find this to be the truest form of, quote, marketing, the truest form of pitching and selling, when you come out of authenticity of, truly, this is how I used to feel. We're kind of getting into like the ideal client world here of really wanting to effectively communicate something because you've lived it, right? And what better expert or authority, or at least just relation point into this thing, than someone who has lived it like you. So go back and just tap into former versions of yourself. That's what I always say. What did Chase think? What did Chase need? What did Ellen need or want during this phase of her life, phase of her business, phase of a relationship? And just go back into how you felt and just share that out. Absolutely. And then the perceived value and implied value really begin to kind of mesh a lot better.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more with that, especially around perceived value, because it is so subjective, right? Completely dependent on how aware someone is of their problem and where they are at that point in their life. And I believe that really your pricing should reflect the urgency and the scope of the problem you solve. So it's two things. It's not just about how big is the problem that you're solving for them. If it's a big problem, you can charge a lot of money because it's worth it to them to pay it to get rid of whatever that is. If it's a small problem, you're going to have a harder time. You're going to come up against a lot more objections. But it's not just about scope. It's also about urgency, because if you hit the gold mine and you're presenting, right, like an offer that not only solves a really big problem, but solves a really urgent problem, value starts to rise and people are so much more willing to pay, more to be able to resolve whatever that is.
Absolutely. And as you begin to pay more attention to this and as you begin to grow, you may find that you are outgrowing your chosen platform, whether it was email, Facebook, Instagram, and maybe you want to grow into another platform, another audience, like what you did. Like when we met last year, soon after that, you tapped into the podcasting space, and I was fortunate enough to really kind of help you get that launched and going. And you've been doing it for almost a year now, which tells me anybody in the podcasting space who can make it to that year mark, like, you're going to stay. You're going to keep going.
Yeah.
And you found that ROI, whether it's total fulfillment and joy and or return on your investment in terms of time and energy and resources and gaining leads or tapping into a marketplace, or even a little bit of both. I think if you're doing it right, this platform is total fulfillment and total ROI for your business or new business potential. Can you walk us through that? So when it's time to grow and tap into another platform, let's talk specifically podcasting. Why podcasting? What has that done for you? And how have you been able to take some of these strategies from social to this new platform?
Yeah. So podcasting is something I wanted to get into for quite a while, but like many people, I let excuses and tech overwhelm stand in my way. So that's why I came to you, Chase, right? After we met at Paleo FX, I was like, I had reached out to you and I was like, I'm thinking about starting a podcast, but I don't really know where to start. I don't even have like any equipment. I don't know the first thing about editing.
You're like, why are you here? I was like, oh, I'm here for the podcast. You're like, what?
Yeah.
I was like, oh, that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah. It was so cool. And it was something that was really, enticing to me, but I just didn't know where to start. And so, and this is, that saying, like, people who pay attention. I realized that I was getting in my own way because I kept coming up with all these excuses trying to, be a DIY Debbie, so to speak. And so I was like, okay, if I pay Chase to help me launch this podcast, then I can't make excuses because, like, I already put the money on the table. His team is waiting on me to, for me to give them what they need to do their jobs. And so I had accountability. And I think that's so important sometimes when you're having a hard time starting something.
It
doesn't always have to.
So important. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even always have to be monetary, but I think just when you do financially invest, there is just a natural built-in layer of accountability. So I'm super grateful for you. I think we put it together super quick. I think within the span of a month, it was like 30 days or less that we launched my podcast, Cubicle, the CEO, in July. And something you drilled in me right from the beginning, you were like, Ellen, you have to be consistent. Whatever you choose, you just got to go with it. You have to do it. And I was like, okay, Chase, I promise. And so, and I have. I think I've maybe only missed 1 week since that first July. Every single Monday morning, there's a new episode up. And that has been really instrumental, I think, in the growth of the podcast, is that consistency. And for me, in terms of what the ROI has been, it's like you said, it's the two-parter. It does bring me personal fulfillment because I just naturally love meeting and talking with people. And when I, like, for example, when I first went to college, like, my dream was to be in broadcast journalism because I've always wanted to. Yeah. So that was actually my major. Exactly. So not exactly how I pictured it, but it's an outlet. It's a creative outlet for me to interview people and to hear the inspiring. So awesome and so fulfilling for me. But on the business side, there's something to be said about having your own not just platform, but media platform, because you would be surprised, even if you're just starting a podcast, you'd be surprised how many more people are willing to say yes to a meeting with you if you can give them something of value up front. Like, hey, I'm going to give you a media platform to speak and share your message on.
Yep. This is huge. This is one of the biggest takeaways. I mean, you're leading with an immediate value add. People flat out love talking about themselves, but also, if they have a new book or whatever out, like, they need platforms to talk about. And podcasters, if you're an interview style, we need guests. Absolutely. So you're leading with immediate value that is your in for relationship building and future opportunity.
Yeah. And I mean, it's just made a world of difference. I mean, the focus of the show, like, I do have solo episodes, where I talk about marketing and business, but for the most part, our episodes are interviews with, successful entrepreneurs, inspiring business leaders. And some of the people that I've had a chance to interview, I mean, it just blows my mind, all the value they give, but also just, I'm like, without this podcast, I know for sure I would not be having this conversation right now with you. Like there'd be no reason for us to talk. So, not me and you, I'm saying like hypothetically to these people. Right. And so it's definitely, just been such a blessing and opportunity. And I would highly recommend a podcast to anyone who is willing to be consistent and, has a message they want to share.
Real quick, as we're kind of getting towards the end here, what has been some of the feedback that you get from people, just real life examples of this was so simple and I was overcomplicating it, or, oh, I had no idea that this was even possible? Can you give us some kind of like secret sauce, if you will, feedback from people in your community and the clients, just to kind of give real life examples of this really isn't rocket science, but it's just a little bit of consistency, a little bit of strategy and accountability, and it can yield you phenomenal results?
Yeah. You're talking about marketing as a whole, right? Not, or are you talking about the podcast?
Like the concepts in general we're talking about here of,
okay.
Yeah, in your marketing.
Totally. I think where people overcomplicate is they think they always have to present something different and new to their audience in order to keep momentum going. And that's where they overcomplicate things, because let me, like, in the simplest way you could think of this, like visually, is like building a bridge. If every single time you start a new project, you are gathering your tools, getting the contractors, right? Like building a bridge. If you are constantly trying to pursue new strategies, new things, you are building all of these like unfinished bridges all the time. And it's taking brain space for you to do that. Whereas if you really, really simplify, you're able to actually know a process well enough that you can start to become efficient and optimize. And whether that means outsourcing so that you free up more of your time, or whether that means automating through software, through technology, you're only able to do that if you do something enough times. And so if I was someone who like every other week was like, oh, I'm going to do a podcast, and now I'm going to write, a blog, and now I'm going to do a YouTube show, and now I'm going to if I did everything, all the things, like I would never actually get anywhere with any of them. And so I think simplicity is really key. And when you're looking at it from growing your business and from a marketing or a sales standpoint too, in the simplest sense, I mean, literally like take out a piece of paper or a whiteboard and just like map out what your customer journey and what that sales funnel looks like. I know funnel is like an overused word that overwhelms some people. Like they're like, I don't even know what that means. Really,
everything's a funnel. Everything in life is a funnel.
Everything.
Like,
exactly.
everything.
It's just like, it's just a journey that you lead someone through. Right. And
it's an
I don't
entrance
even
point into your world. It's the first door that someone takes to enter into what Ellen has to offer, what Ellen is about, her content, everything. It's that first door into, the hallway of many other doors probably.
Yeah. And I like to describe it as a relationship funnel, not a sales funnel, because it is a relationship. And when someone first meets you, they're just a stranger. But how do you lead them to the next point, to take a step further, and then a step further, to take another specific action? And if you can just simplify, I mean, you can literally have, like a 3-step funnel. You could literally have someone comes across you on, let's say, social media or your podcast, and then you invite them to start a conversation with you. Yeah. Maybe you invite them to your email list or whatever it is to book a call with you, and then you close them on the call. That's like what? Like a 2-3-step funnel. It doesn't have to be complicated. I know a lot of people who operate that way. Yeah.
Yeah. If you have your kind of your vernacular, your copy, your messaging down, and you can effectively talk to somebody, they find you, they book you, they buy you.
Exactly. It's really that simple. And you can easily, even just as a person of like a team of one, you can easily scale to 6 figures, multi-6 figures on just the back of that one tiny simple funnel. And so I think it's really important to just not overcomplicate things, focus, and be consistent, like all things.
Yeah. And I love what you said there. I think that's a great, I think this might be the name of the podcast, relationship funnel building, building a relationship funnel.
Yeah.
I can tell you, especially through, 3+ years now of the podcast specifically, also about 3 years now of being self-employed. Look, in the beginning, we get excited and maybe we get kind of, I hate to say money hungry, but look, like me, when I left my job, like I had to be money hungry. I had to chase the dollars because I had rent to pay and I needed to make this business work. And over time, I realized where total fault to my own, when I led with sales funnels, when I led with sales first, I want to meet this person because I want them to buy from me. I sometimes missed the mark because it came to be over the, that relationship or just getting to know each other in person, online, whatever. It was more worthwhile. It was more advantageous for us just to know each other for future potential, for future possibilities, for future collaborations, whatever. And so if you lead with, give value first, lead with relationship building first, then you can take a step back, and that's, then they step into your world, or maybe it's you, theirs. You need to kind of lead with that first so that you have, I'll say, a better clarity perspective when you step into that world. Then you can really gauge, all right, this is going to be a great client of mine, or this is just going to be a great relationship, and this could be something down the road, like you were saying earlier. Maybe this can be something else entirely.
Yeah, and I think it's kind of like being like a detective, like a private investigator, right? If you go in again with that confirmation bias where you're like, I have already predetermined that the purpose of this conversation or the purpose of this relationship is X, and you're unwilling to budge from that, you may be, that's when people start to feel the sleazy sales, right? It's like you're trying to push something on someone that they may or may not actually need or want. Whereas if you go into a conversation with an open mind and you're simply digging, like you're just like a little detective over here trying to look for clues, trying to ask, like trying to figure out what is actually inside their head. Once they verbalize that to you in their own words, you are now able to say, take a step back and go, okay, I have a solution that can meet your need. Or I don't, but I have a connection for you, or something entirely different. Maybe we meet back up at a later point. So if you go in with an open mind, it will totally change the way I think that you do business.
Well said. Well said. Absolutely. Ellen, it's been great having you on here. I'm really happy for you and your show now. You're about almost at that year mark. And
so excited.
It's like this term in the industry called pod fading. Most people don't make it past that one year. And after that, they pod fade. They kind of lose interest or don't get the return that they thought they would have received if they even knew what that was. So starting anything, whether it's a podcast, whether it's a pitch, whether it's a funnel, whether it's just a conversation, even having the tiniest bit of strategy, but damn sure a good wholehearted intention will yield you tenfold of whatever you thought you were going to get back on that.
Yeah, no, I'm so excited. And again, so grateful to you for your friendship and your support and helping make my podcast dream a reality.
Thank you.
So thank you.
Well, I have to ask, I think you're a clear example of it, but I have to ask, ever forward, you adopt that mindset clearly. You're consistent, you're showing up, but you're also leading and giving for your community and your clients. What does that really mean to you, though? How would you say that you live a life ever forward?
I think it can be summed up simply as this. If a door shuts in your face, pivot when it's not your turn and persist until it is. That's a life ever forward to me. The 2 P's, you just pivot, persist, That really is this idea of just, an object in motion stays in motion. So just keep going.
Yeah. I like that. Very succinct. Thank you. So definitely going to have your show and your content down in the show notes. You guys definitely want to check out her podcast and follow her on Instagram. Gives a beautiful, well-curated page, but also just gives incredible value for concepts and strategies and relationship funnels. Absolutely. But definitely some sales funnels for sure. Once you kind of get into her world. Where can they find you real quick though? Your Instagram handle, where can they go right now to click?
Yeah, you can go to @MissEllenYin, and that's pretty much my handle for all social media. And then my podcast is Cubicle the CEO, and we actually recently interviewed Chase on it, so that episode should be going live soon.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Ellen, thank you so much. That's a wrap. Appreciate you.
Thank you.